What is going on, everybody? Welcome into Wager Alarm. I'm Howard Bender. With me, of course, Craig Mish. Time to start taking a look at some NFL player props. We're going to talk quarterbacks today, looking at some passing yards, maybe some touchdowns, all sorts of stuff going on here for player props. It is that time of season. What's up, Craig? How you doing today?
I'm doing well, and you know what's great is that there are so many different options to bet on now that literally anything you can think of you can bet on. And so over the next few days here on Wager Alarm, we're going to go over some quarterback propositions in terms of total yards, running back propositions, and also some wide receivers and tight ends. And so from fantasy to wagering, it is really all available. And I think that by the end of these videos that we do, you may be getting a little bit of a lean and maybe even a possibility of a pick on something that you may consider this year.
Ooh, nice. I like the leans. I like the picks. Now, let me ask you a question here. When because we like to do these when we start talking
Sure.
prop bets, and we did this with the wins totals already. That first episode we record, we always like to kind of touch on certain things that you look for when you're identifying a prop. Like with wins totals, we like the middle. We don't like the extremes. We don't like the 4 win total and think about the under. We don't like the 12.5 win total and think about the over. How do you view it as far as player props go, particularly with passing yards, since we're going to talk quarterbacks here?
Yeah, sure. And I think more so maybe with running backs and wide receivers. But if, for example, if I'm going to try and look at a total of 10 propositions with quarterbacks, meaning that I'm going to take of the 20 propositions they have available in terms of total yards, I'm probably going to lean more on the unders than I will on the overs for a couple of different reasons. First of all, you understand it's 17 games this year. And so all of these props are going to look a little inflated because, simply put, when they're making the lines, they're just extrapolating what a 16-game season would be into a 17-game season. But the part of this that is really important to know, and some of the reason why I'll have some unders, is simply because players get hurt. And to just count on players to play 17 games this season is a foolish proposition. So that doesn't factor into every single player that we discuss. But when in doubt, I always, in the back of my mind, Howard, am saying, well, look, all the player has to do is really miss one game, and this prop is going under. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. And by the way, especially at quarterback.
Okay. I mean, listen, that makes sense. Definitely makes sense. So if we're leaning on the unders, let's start it off here and with a guy and first on your list, Minnesota's finest, everybody's favorite. You like that? You like that? Yeah, give me some Kirk Cousins here. The passing yards prop is 4,050.5. These are all coming from FanDuel Sportsbook, right, Craig?
Yes, these are all FanDuel.
Mm-hmm. All FanDuel Sportsbook. You like the under on Kirk Cousins. Now, I mean, listen, it's a run-first offense, right? But, if I'm looking at, what, 4 of his last 5 years, 5 of his last 6 years, he's gone over. So are you talking about, are you leaning on the over because of history, or are you leaning on the under, like you just said, because you're worried about age and history?
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's a good question. And he did throw for 3,600 yards and played in 15 games a couple of years ago as well. First of all, I'm not a Cousins fan. I understand that the numbers back up everything that you're saying, and this is the only. And I want to make this very clear. This is probably the only player that I'm going to bring this subject up because it just has to be done. But I got to be honest that any player that is a quarterback in the NFL that refuses to be vaccinated, that is certainly Kirk Cousins' choice. But it also lends the question that if something was to go wrong at all this year, he's going to be immediately shut down for 1 week. And if he misses 1 week, Howard, he is not going to go over this proposition. Now, I don't know the health and protocols and vaccinations of all the players in the NFL, but I know what this guy's is, and I know his choice is to not. Now, that doesn't make me feel one way or the other about the player necessarily, but it does make me worry a little bit if this is a definitive choice for the entire season. All it's going to require is one misstep, and he's going to miss a game. And we've seen this happen way too much already in the NFL, and that was last year before we even had the vaccination. So don't want to do this for hours and hours on Wager Alarm this season and hate to even start off on this, but that definitely is playing a factor into my thought process. And again, I think that Cousins, to me, also is coming to the end of the line in terms of his time in Minnesota. So combination of both things, I like the under for Kirk Cousins passing yards in 2021.
Yeah, and something to be clear with everybody, it's not, this isn't Craig or I passing judgment on Cousins and his choice or anybody's choice about being vaccinated. This is where we're just putting our money. All right. And that's the thing. And if the Minnesota Vikings happen to have the lowest vaccination rate of any team in the NFL, and he's been outspoken about not being vaccinated, it's definitely something that you have to consider. It has nothing to do with personal preferences or any thought process there. Has everything to do with where we want to put our money and where we want to kind of keep it safe. So,
sure. Yeah. And by the way, a good example of something like this is that, it may hail at a game. And how much do we sit there and talk about that when we're handicapping a game with a possibility of bad weather? I mean, this is like a hail for a quarterback. The guy, if anything should happen, is gonna miss a game due to this, and he may not even test positive for anything, but just being a close contact. You know how this whole thing goes. I don't even want to go down this road this year. I wish we did not have to, but that is factoring somewhat into my handicap. Is it 80% of my handicap? No. Is it 10%? Sure. But one game out, he does not go over. And that's what I'm banking on in terms of this. And I'm not banking on him with the virus. I'm just banking on him, being
missing a game. Yeah, listen, I like it. I like it a lot. All right, next player, we're going to go over to Tennessee. We're going to take a look at Ryan Tannehill. His prop is 4,150.5 yards, which, I mean, listen, I get it. If you're talking about the 17-game season, you want to inflate it, but I mean, he's been under in the last 4 straight years. And I mean, last year was that was the peak of those 4 years, and it was 3,800 yards. Run first offense as well. Are you over or under on Ryan Tannehill?
Yeah, and I think the narrative that you paint is definitely the thought process when you think of Ryan Tannehill. You think of Tennessee and you think of running the ball. But remember, when he played with the Dolphins, he had back-to-back seasons of over 4,000 yards, and he had 600 attempts with Miami 3 straight seasons. And the reason why Miami had to do that is because they couldn't play defense. And the Tennessee Titans last year were 28th in total defense. I think, Howard, they have the worst defense in the NFL going into this season. Derrick Henry's been a model of health. That's absolutely the case. That very well could be the case this season. But what if Derrick Henry misses a game or 2, or anything should happen to Derrick Henry? Tannehill is going to fly over this number. So for me, having to play catch up all season and banking on a running back to get as many carries as Derrick Henry has the last 3 years, to me, I'm playing the percentages that those things even out. And by the way, he doesn't have to throw for 4,500 yards. He just has to go over a little bit over 4,000. They added some help this offseason in terms of receiving. I don't love it, but it's an upgrade nonetheless. I'm going to go over on Ryan Tannehill. I think they play a lot of catch-up this season, Howard, a lot of high-scoring games, and that's going to force him to throw the ball.
It's amazing. They really just did not do any work on that secondary in the offseason.
No.
Really? So, all right. I like that one there. And over for Ryan Tannehill. Let's head over to the Washington football team. Here's an interesting one. So Ryan Fitzpatrick, 3,900.5. He has gone under in the last 5 straight seasons. Now, granted, Ryan Fitzpatrick has never been the guy in the last 5 years. He's, obviously been mentoring youngsters and moving in and out. He also has had some injuries in his time as well. For 3,900, for him to go over this is a full season for Ryan Fitzpatrick. It really is. And I get it. You got Terry McLaurin there. Logan Thomas is a good target. Antonio Gibson's going to catch a bunch of passes out of that backfield. But, listen, the Fitzmagic still has a finite shelf life. We've seen it before. So I got to tell you, if I had to pick here, I'm going to say you're leaning on the under.
Yeah, this one doesn't make any sense to me at all. I mean, banking on Ryan Fitzpatrick to play 17 games, you got to be out of your mind. He started 16 games once since 2012. And that's 9 or 8 years, Howard. He is not starting 16 games or 17 games this season. And you're right. At some point, he's going to have back-to-back games with mistakes where they're going to make a quarterback change. It just happens with him every single time that he comes back in and he's good again. But with a number of almost 4,000, I believe he's got to play every game. And I don't think that he will. This is a stunning number to me. I'm definitely on the under on Fitzpatrick, and I'm not going to get too cute with these and take contrarian approaches when I don't see it. I don't see Fitzpatrick throwing for this much. By the way, the weapons that he had in some of these other places, yeah, I mean, he's got one in McLaurin, but he does not have those receivers that he had in Tampa Bay. And Miami couldn't run the ball at all. He was throwing the ball up and down the field for 14 games. So I am under here on this number.
I like it. I like it a lot. I agree with you on that one wholeheartedly. Last QB I want to talk about here, Buffalo's finest, Josh Allen. I mean, dude, this guy was coming off a career year last year. Took that step that, the truthers thought always that he could do it. A lot of people were questioning whether or not his accuracy was going to be okay. They get him Stephon Diggs, and what happens? 4,500 yards, 37 touchdowns, 10 picks only, but you're not looking at his arm, are you, Craig?
No, we're going to do Josh Allen's rushing prop for 2020, and it's somewhere, it just depends on where you see the prop, close to 450, somewhere along that line. But let's take a look at Josh Allen's rushing numbers the last 3 years. 631 his rookie season, 510 his second season, and then 421 last season. Not to mention the first 7 games of last season, Allen had rushing games of 61, 42, and 57, and then the next 10 games he didn't rush for over 38 yards in any game. This is no indictment on the player. This is an understanding that to keep Josh Allen healthy over the course of his career, there's simply no way he's going to be able to run as much as he has. And by the way, if he does exactly what he did last year, he probably still goes under this number. I understand there's an extra game, and so therefore the 421 that he had last year, add another 20 or 30. I think that this is an under here, Howard. And I think he could get close to 400 again, and I think he'll be healthy and it'll be close. But Buffalo has to watch how much they allow him to run. This is not like a Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson situation. He literally gets the ball at the goal line every time. And I'm going to go under on Josh Allen's rushing yards. I think all the other numbers are going to be there, by the way, for him. But I think this takes another step back. And look, why are we going to go against the trend? 3 straight years it goes down. What, all of a sudden it's going to go back up? I don't think so.
Well, even like you said, even if it does go back up, I mean, he's got to come in with, almost 60 yards for that, for that final game. Obviously not that final game, but, he needs another 60-yard performance in order to make that happen. That's a tall order, for sure. I do. I'm with you there. I love him in the offense, but you talk to any coach, and listen, it's even with Kyler Murray or those guys, they don't want him running as much as they do. They even want to try to pull back Lamar Jackson because of the injury risk that happens when these guys take that hit. So I can dig that on the under there for Josh Allen rushing yards. The prop is 475.5 for the full season. So that's a tight one. All right, so let me just sum this up here. Our quarterback picks: Kirk Cousins under 4,050.5 passing yards. Ryan Tannehill over 4,150.5 passing yards. Ryan Fitzpatrick under 3,900.5 passing yards. Josh Allen under 475.5 rushing yards. I dig those. I definitely do. I mean, I like them. You know what? I like the fact that you're not diving into the touchdown totals here. That's always it's always an interesting, way to when you start looking at different props, and touchdowns can be so up and down from season to season. So I like the fact that you avoided that run.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we'll do in this series is try to control the destiny of the player, and yards I think is a better indicator than touchdowns. That's for sure.
No doubt about it. All right, well there you go. That's 5 of our favorite QB props. When you join us next, we'll be diving into some running backs and the rushing yards and all that fun stuff there. So for Craig Mish, I'm Howard Bender. This has been Wager Alarm. We'll catch you next time.